a resilience to a natural brilliant state.
We're all here to move our Black communities forward.
We think our children have to have the best. It's all about discipline.
How are we going to discipline ourselves so that we're able to save, so that we're able to make good financial decisions?
Recognizing that there's a road ahead if you manage the road in front of you.
The decisions that you're going to be making today in your lives where it comes to money will affect you in the future.
Discipline is one of the things that we often learn, sometimes by our environment, or sometimes we're forced to do it, and sometimes we don't learn it at all.
Stores want to get us in and out and get our money, and that's it. It's a game, so you have to be really wise to the game.
Do you know what it costs to run your home on a monthly basis?
Land acknowledgement. As we gather together, we acknowledge the sacred land on which we reside. It has been a site of human activity for 15,000 years. This land is the territory of the Huron-Wendat and Petun First Nations, the Seneca, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit River. The territory was the subject of Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy and Confederacy of the Ojibwe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Today, this gathering place is still the home of many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work in the community on this territory. We are also mindful of broken covenants and the need to strive to make right with all our relations. Last but certainly not least, we acknowledge the people of African descent who were brought here against their own will or in search of a safe place to live their lives and raise their children. Reconnaissance des terres. En nous rassemblant, nous reconnaissons la terre sacrée sur laquelle nous résidons. C'est un site d'activité humaine depuis 15 000 ans. Cette terre est le territoire des Premières Nations Huron-Wendat et Petun, les Scéniques et plus récemment les Mississaugas de la rivière Crédit. Le territoire était sujet de l'alliance de la ceinture Wampum plat avec cuillère, un accord entre la Confédération Iroquois et Confédération des Ojibwe et des nations alliées à partager et à prendre soin pacifiquement pour les ressources autour des Grands Lacs. Aujourd'hui, ce lieu de rassemblement est toujours le foyer de nombreux peuples autochtones de toute l'île de la Tortue et nous sommes reconnaissants d'avoir la possibilité de travailler dans la communauté sur ce territoire. Nous sommes également conscients des alliances brisées et de la nécessité de nous efforcer de guérir toutes nos relations. Dernier point, mais non le moindre, nous remercions les personnes d'ascendance africaine qui ont été amenées ici contre leur volonté ou à la recherche d'un endroit sûr où vivre leur vie et élever leurs enfants.
This webinar provides illustrative information with respect to the subject matter covered and does not represent an official opinion or position of the Black Business and Professional Association. The BBPA makes no representations, warranties, or guarantees as to assume no responsibility for the content or application of the material contained herein, and especially disclaim all liability for any damages arising out of the use or reference to or lines on such material.
And it is another Saturday morning. Good morning. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Tell a friend to join us here on Community Space, the financial literacy program that speaks the language of the community, that informs the community and is here for the community. Sponsored by the BBPA, RBC, and the Donald Reed Estate. And this morning, we're going to speak about money, as we always do, and finances. And we've got another special guest. But before we get to our special guest, the quote of the day is, if your cornfield is far from your house, the birds will eat your corn. So basically, my interpretation of that, and that's somebody from the Congo who had wrote that, but my interpretation of that is that you've got to mind your business and you've got to keep your business close because somebody else will take the reaps, or sorry, the yield of what you've reaped. So you've got to mind your business. You've got to keep it close because somebody else will be there to take it. And the second piece is wealth diminishes with use. However, learning increases with use. So we've got to be always on the topic of our business in terms of learning and ready to go that next step in terms of everything that we do when it comes down to our finances and our businesses. So without further ado, we're going to introduce a person who's no stranger to community space. His name is Andre Flip, and we know him as Smith also, Andre Flip Smith. Good morning, Andre. How are you this morning?
Good morning. Good morning. I'm doing great. Yourself?
I'm well, thank you. How's the family? How's everybody?
Family's doing good. I was actually, my son keeps pressuring me to take him to the fancy playground. That's the indoor playground by Woodbine.
Okay, all right.
There soon.
All right. Well, we know it's that time of year. The season is upon us where, giving and, all the visions of what you wanted to do for so long sometimes come true. But again, it all takes, as we know, the savings, the money to make a lot of these things happen. So, there's no shame in the game. And when it comes down to making sure that we have those resources. And from my perspective, money is, we often heard growing up, money is the root to all evil, but I don't agree with that. I think money is the root to access to opportunity in a lot of cases, because this world is inevitably and will be continuing to run on money. And I think when we don't have money, that's when the problems are. So again, I think sometimes we learn just by the way our environments were set up, and some of our ancestors were taught that money was something to be shunned because, again, in a lot of cases, they didn't have that. But days have changed, and we're woke now. So
yeah, 100%. And that's actually part of my mission is to go to especially within our community and other marginalized community, and to educate and to let people understand. The way I look at money, it's a tool, right? And like any other tool, it really depends on how you use it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I saw something there in the chat. That's actually something that I came to clarify as well. Fiona, that is the love of money itself. That is the root of all evil, not money itself. And Victoria says, or not, yeah, the same person said, the Bible said money answers all things, really. And it's really always we use money. And a big part of my motivation to be talking about money in different capacities is the influence of Black Wall Street. And I've mentioned Black Wall Street on this forum many times and many other forums, right? Because as much as money can create problems, it can solve a lot of our challenges that we face as a community. And I'm going to talk about budgeting today and the impact of inflation on our money. But of course, I'll be sharing my own experiences that I've had with budgeting and things like that. And like the biggest thing here, like although we're having a discussion, I want people to actually implement and start taking action. Before I go into the discussion, I don't know if Roderick, if you had anything else that wanted to talk about before I start the session.
Well, yeah, you know what? I would love to hear where people are joining us from. And also, if they could tell a friend to tell a friend, it's not too late right now to spread this word, because budgeting, as we all know, is integral to not just saving, but to making sure that we have enough, not just for every day, but sometimes those rainy days that we may encounter. But again, budgeting is something that we should be practicing and also teaching our young people within our communities, because it is, again, so important to make sure that we have not just what is in front of us, but again, something that we, things happen in life, right? And I can tell you from times when I was a younger person, when I wasn't necessarily budgeting to the best degree, and things may jump up where we don't expect, right? And also, you want to make sure that you're putting things aside, not just, as I was saying, just for today, but for your children's education, for your home, or whatever that may look like. That you've compartmentalized your income to make it go not just that further, but for the areas that you need to invest in or whatever you have upcoming. So budgeting is extremely important. Very, very important. All right. So this morning we've got people joining us from Markham, Ontario, from Whitby. Good morning, Brampton, Niagara region, Antigua. All right.
Antigua, big up.
That's it. That's it. My brother opened up an office in Antigua. So we'd love to see that international growth in terms of business. And Aurora and Burlington. So good morning. Definitely, folks. Again, tell a friend to tell a friend. We're about to get started with Andre Flip Smith. So let's do this.
I love it. I feel like I love when people play with the name Flip and Floss, and I get so many different variations. I mean, I think the most common one is flip flop, but I think that comes from the slippers in Jamaica.
All right, yeah. And there ain't no flop in here. There's just
Right,
floss.
we're no flipping around here. We're flipping and we're flossing all
That's
the way,
it.
right? And I'm gonna put, like I was going through. I got up early this morning and I was talking about my areas of focus for 2023, because I don't really look at New Year's resolution. One of the things that I talked about as one of my areas of focus is generational wealth, life insurance, wills and estate planning, and trust, right? And I don't know how many people here are familiar with Rockefeller and the Vanderbilt, but these are two really important cases for how to build and to sustain generational wealth, which is an important part of the wealth creation process. So putting that out there, you can easily, I think once you throw Rockefeller versus Vanderbilt in Google, it will take you directly to some lessons and things that you can learn from both structures. But Rockefeller has been able to build a successful trust system that ensures generational wealth forever, right? And so a lot of lessons can be learned from that. And as I said, I'm going to be talking about budgeting, so I'm just going to put up my deck here. Give me 1 second. So how many people on the chat currently uses a budget? And it could be an Excel document or a budgeting tool. I know they have I know TD has a budgeting app built into their platform. And there's also Mint. How many people here currently use a budgeting tool or any type of budgeting to manage your finances? Just indicate in the chat, you can say yes, no, or sometimes. Let me see.
All right. A couple people. Actually, one person said they use Mint.
Yeah.
This person said they're using Excel. A couple people said they haven't used it.
Yeah. All right. Now, one of the things I will say, when I started my financial journey, I started with a budget. And I know when you hear people talk about budgeting, it almost sounds cliche. But it really depends on how you use budgeting as a tool, but I find it extremely effective. Right now, I look at budgeting slightly differently. It's more so for business, and sometimes I do it for my household, but in all fairness, I don't do it all the time. But even though I don't physically put together a personal or a household budget, I still have a good sense of what's coming in and what's going out, and stay below that threshold, right? But budgeting is where it really started for me in terms of building the discipline and the infrastructure to really be able to manage finances. And your budget should be forward looking. a lot of times people, when we do our budget, it's the most forward-looking it becomes is the next paycheck. Okay, so like I'm getting paid next week, and this is what is coming in, this is what is going out. But when I say a forward-looking budget, I'm talking about the next 6 months, the next year, the next 2 years. Like, what is it that you're trying to achieve? So a budget by itself is just a summary of your income and your expenses. But a budget that has goals is truly where you should strive to be. And I'm gonna create a phrase to match what I just said. But you really need some goals. Are you trying to pay off debt? Are you trying to generate cash flow? Are you trying to invest? Right. So these are could be some potential goals coming from your budget. And I see some people use Mint. Mint is great along with other fintech options because you can easily connect them to your bank account, and you can quickly get your expenses filtered into the Mint app. Or if you want to do it manually, me personally, I'm more on the manual side. I'll most likely use Excel than some other platform. Let's do that again. It says the host has disabled participant sharing. Not sure what's going on.
Let's see if I can get that going there for you, Andre.
I think somebody that's like something.
All right, I'm not too sure what happened there.
Yeah, Andre.
Okay. Okay.
How do I hide my share bar? My share panel doesn't go down there. We're all good now? Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, sir.
All right, perfect. So, this is a very important statement for me. And I don't just like walk around with it. We're not only talking about money, we're changing lives. And, our goal is to close the wealth gap. And we are seeing tremendous progress on this, where this is concerned, both in Canada and Jamaica. All right, so let's get the discussion going. I've already asked the prompt question about budgeting, and you can skip the human bingo part. All right, so what is a budget? So a budget is an estimation of income and expenses over a specific period of time, and it's usually compiled and reevaluated on a periodic basis. So, like for me, what got me into budgeting was because I was in debt. I owed a lot of money, right? And so I needed to keep a close eye on how much I was making and what was going out. And interestingly, like when people look at what is going out, what people tend to look at is the main things. They look at, okay, my rent, my grocery, my car payment. But very few people look at interest as an expense going out. Or like simple things like subscription or wants. Like not a lot of us classify our expenses into needs versus wants, and so oftentimes where a lot of money is lost is in the wants and the interest expense that we're paying on our credit cards, on our car payment and all these other things, right? So we need to take a look at the other areas that we can potentially save on. And so that is what budgeting did for me. It allowed me to look under a microscope of my finances, income and expenses, but it also expanded my thinking around income, right? And as you will see in the discussion, that income is much broader than your wages and salary, right? And you can definitely use your budget as a tool to think about creative ways, cover your expenses and to achieve your goals, right? I know most of us start with our salary from our job, right? So that's why I have that as number one, right? So your budget, you have your wages coming in, and typically how I do my budget, which I'll get into a template shortly, is I always look on my net number, right? I know a lot of institutions, when they're making a decision to give loans, they will do it based on your gross income, which don't make any sense in my opinion, because it's almost like you're setting me up to fail from the start, because you're looking at a gross number, and then once all the taxes and everything is deducted, what is left is probably like $800 or $1,000 difference, depending on how much you're making, right? Which means that there is a shortfall starting, in my opinion, of $800 to $1,000 right from the start. But when you're thinking about your income, especially in this day and age, you should be thinking more broader about your earnings, right? And even if you only have one category now, you should start thinking about ways in which you can expand your earnings. And so there are 7 wonders of the world, right? Or 7 streams of income, right? There's wages and salary. There's rental income that you earn from renting your real estate. And, there are many ways in which, you can rent your real estate. There's Airbnb, short-term rental. There's long-term rental. There's real estate investment trusts. Those are operate like a stock that you can invest in. And number 3, there's dividend income. So if you buy stocks, earn a dividend, it adds to your income, right? So you want to increase the level of earnings each month. There's interest income that you get from, the bank. How many people heard about what and I know this is probably a much bigger discussion. I probably won't have time to talk about it here. But did people hear about the government's effort to create a bond for Ukraine, and they're going to be paying interest? I think it's I think it was 3 point something or 5% interest. I don't remember the exact rate, but what are your thoughts? What are people's thoughts on that? Right, the government creating a bond for the people of Ukraine. It's the first I've ever seen something like this. Anyone has any thoughts about that? Okay. Some people haven't heard, but yeah, I think that's the first. The government of Canada is embarking on something to that effect. And I'm going to reserve my views, but I have mixed views on the whole thing. There's royalty income, right? So royalty income, comes from, you building some type of intellectual property. It could be writing a book, and you're earning proceeds from the sale of that book. All you do, you just list the book on Amazon, and every time a book gets sold, you get royalty income. And then there's capital gains, from buying and selling capital assets. Capital assets are like stocks or real estate. So if you buy a property, you sell it for more than what you paid. There's capital gain. There's profit from doing business. Now, for me, when I was in debt, I kept my wages and my salary, and I used that to cover my day-to-day expenses. And then my business income, I only had 2 streams of income at the time, which was wages and salary and profit. And I used my wage and salary to cover my day-to-day expenses, and whatever was left, I put it towards savings and debt. And then the profit from my business, 100% of it went toward paying off debt, because my first objective was to get out of debt. Remember, I said your budget must serve a purpose. I know a lot of people, they heard about a budget, so they just go in and they put a budget in place and they just, boom, income, expenses, net. What is the overall objective? What are you trying to achieve? And I have this Tim Hortons picture here and this Starbucks picture, because I like to say there are 2 types of people who budget. The people who budget the people who budget, who has a budget for Tim Hortons, but they live a Starbucks life. And then the people have the Starbucks life but live the Tim Hortons budget. So make sure you're not overextended by living a Starbucks life on a Tim Hortons budget. All right. So let me ask a question and share in the chat. Of these 7 streams that I have here, which streams are you currently earning from? So I'm going to leave these here for a little bit so that people can look at the streams and say how many streams they are currently earning from. Is it just wages, or it's a combination of wages and salary plus profit? Just drop that in the chat. Let me see where people are at.
Drop it in the chat, folks. Let's see, where are your sources of income coming from?
All right. Number 6. So is it number 6 plus number 1, or just number 6 only? And Camila's 4. Book sales, all right. Slow, wages, salaries, rental income, interest income. Nice. Love that. So multiple streams there. That's what I call multiple and diverse stream. wages, salaries, rental income, interest income. Very good. All right, so yeah, like make that a part of your New Year's resolution. If you're gonna tell me about New Year's resolution, which is something that I'm not big on, tell me it's gonna be to expand your streams of income and diversify your portfolio, right? All right, so now we're gonna look at the sources of expenses, and number one on the list is your partner. Is that true? I don't know. That's something depending on the dynamics of the relationship, that could very well be true. I won't get into the dynamics, but we are all familiar with those dynamics that can, and you know, Warren Buffett says, if you want to get broke, spend your money on liquor, lady, or leverage. I don't know how truthful that is, but he said those are the 3 L's. The sources of expenses. So, you know, rent, that is a need, right? That's an important expense. You know, but the reality is that sometimes we can easily turn a need into a want. Yes, the need for somewhere to stay, especially in Canada where it's cold, that is important. But sometimes we can get a Starbucks type, a Tim Horton type rental. Let's say you can get a rental for $700, but we prefer to get a Starbucks rental in the heart of downtown where we're paying $3,000 versus $1,500 or $2,000. So again, which mindset are you going with? And there's nothing wrong with either mindset as long as you can afford it. Because, you know, I heard this story once, and I don't know what people's perspective are. Feel free at any time to come on and share your perspective on this or drop it in the chat. But I was watching this YouTube video once, and this guy said, part of the challenge with a lot of minorities is that when we go to a developed country, we automatically look for cheap neighborhood and cheap rent. And so we quickly immerse ourselves into an experience that limits our opportunities. And he said, if you were to put yourself in more like a middle income to a rich neighborhood and you pay the higher rent, it will kind of push your mindset and it will push you to do even better things. So choosing a cheaper rent could potentially be a part of your downfall, is what this person was arguing. If you, like I said, if you want to come on, raise your virtual hand and you can share your thoughts on that or drop it in the chat. All right. The groceries, again, another source of expense. And of course, that is changing. The price of groceries is changing rapidly, right, due to inflation. And yes, I see Fiona. Fiona, go for it.
And before Fiona gets on here, Nadine Thompson shared that the number one expense should be children, and I concur.
Not the partner. Oh no, you see, I don't see that's the thing. I think Nadine and I are like this here. It's hard to think of my son as an expense. He is, but I don't know. I haven't adopted that mindset yet.
Well, wait till they start asking for the Jordans and for the
Right.
brand name jeans and everything else, and then we'll see if you still have that same opinion.
Yes, it will probably change. Yes, Fiona. I think Fiona wanted to share something with us.
Mindset does, sorry, good morning, thank you for this. Mindset does matter because I think we get comfortable to say we're not stretching ourselves because we're just saying, okay, I'm making enough for the rent, I'm making enough for this. But there's more than just because I live here and the rent is affordable. But if you're living in a place where you're excelling and you're thinking above and beyond, and you're thinking, because you're around the people that are saying, I want to buy a home, I want to have an investment property. It's not just about, oh, I'm living here and my rent is manageable, so I'm okay to stay in this job and stay comfortable and not just widen our thinking about growing and having different ways of thrilling in our income and our wealth.
Yeah, I share the same view as you, Fiona. Totally agree. I don't know if anyone has a different perspective. Thanks for sharing, Fiona. I see Jason Knight has, is that Kinte? Jason has his hand up.
Good morning, Jason. And then we'll get to Erica. Good morning, Jason. You could take yourself off mute.
Hi. Yeah, Kinte, like Kunta Kinte. My dad named
Yeah,
me
okay.
after Kunta Kinte from Roots. That's how you say it, Kinte. Um, and I put it at the end in 1997 on his U of T. I'm the slave that got away and took his name back. Okay, so I think that one of the biggest problems that I'm seeing, because I grew up in Pickering, but some of my friends that grew up, their parents were from Jamaica and everything, and their parents both were working and they had money and everything, but because they were watching American TV, they all wanted to be like Biggie Smalls and Tupac and stuff like that. And some of those guys went to prison, even though both of their parents were ambitious, law-abiding people, and they live in big houses, bigger than me. So the thing is, now I'm seeing even in Antigua, the culture, what people see is what they think they're going to be. Almost all these kids I play at a basketball court in Antigua, they want to be American. They all want to go America, play basketball, be like Michael Jordan, because of the marketing, and they because the song even played down here. I'd like to be like Mike, I said, forget that. I'd like to be like Bill. So I worked at Microsoft and I'm hiring, and it's hard for me to hire people because all these people that I meet, the black guys, I got the black girls scholarships, but the black guys think they can only kick a ball and play basketball because of what they see.
Mhm.
Speaking.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Like, there's that influence, and we definitely need to change that kind of thinking. Like, it's the same for me. Like when growing up in Jamaica, and I said to the guys that are part of the Cali group, like, we need to stop pushing these limits on the children, because like I heard them talking and they were like, oh yeah, we can ensure that these people are disciplined and that at least they can get a cleaning job or a police job or a soldier job. No, at least nothing. We need to show them the world, show them that there's more than what we've been cultured to think about, and that type of innovative and creativity in our community will definitely help us to think, see the bigger picture. So I share that same sentiment there. So thanks for sharing.
And if I
I see a
can
number of
comment
hands
on
up.
that
I don't
before
know who's.
Erica, I think what the BBPA here is doing, like in terms of providing programs like this, is exposing people to the buffet of life. And
Yes.
we like to say, people go with what they know. So if your vision or your scope is limited, you're going to go with exactly what that may be, right? And when you are exposed to options, to choices, to see that there's more than basketball, crime, and hip hop in a lot of cases, right? People are then given an opportunity to choose wisely, or as we say, to be informed in their decision making. So this is needed, like, and this is why we always encourage people to tell a friend to tell a friend, because if we are just only focused on what our scope or what our identity from mainstream society has been given to us or told, or that's continued to be perpetuated through media and whatnot, will often stay within this realm of just, closed and pigeonholed thinking, right? So, when it comes down to budgeting or finances, that's usually not associated with our community, right? So we have to mindfully and intentionally change that. Absolutely. Erica, good morning.
There we go. Good morning. Worry about where you live and going for something cheaper. We have to consider the social and economic determinants of health. And that, depending on where you live, that can add to your stress. And as we've seen, that can have negative health impacts. And also, if you live in a place that's really rough, are you going to want to have people over? Are you going to be so ashamed? And as we know that having that some type of social interaction is also important to your health, and also the quality of food that's in your neighborhood. We hear about food deserts, and having communities where it's safe to go for walks and exercise, again, really important to your health. So it's finding that balance between what you can afford and how it will impact your health, and then the cost too, because if you're sick all the time, well, then you're spending more money to get well. So we have to think in those in broader strokes sometimes, but it's hard right now with the way rent and groceries are. But that's just something else to put out there. How where you live impacts your immediate health, your long-term health, and your social prospects too.
Yeah, You put that together really nicely, and I'm glad you talk about the social determinants of health. And that is something that I feel like we need to factor in more into our decision making, because and I'm glad for what the BBPA is doing, and my role in all of this as well, in educating people, because a lot of times, and even I can speak for myself, that when I came here and I was looking for somewhere to live, the only thing that I thought about was the price and the location. When I think of location, I was thinking about what's close to TTC bus, so that as I leave my apartment, I can get on the bus. Those are the only factors that I considered. And so I found myself in a community where after living there for like a few months, someone got shot nearby, where there were constant arguments outside, and people were arguing over parking spots, and everyone was crazy in the neighborhood. So you have to balance that with, like the cost with health and your prospects. I mean, fortunately for me, I had a mindset that was really shaped from when I was in Jamaica. And so it wasn't easy for me to like fall into certain things. So that was where I became lucky, but not a lot of people are so fortunate. But yeah, we definitely have to expand the thinking there in terms of like balancing cost and your opportunities for upward mobility with health, both physical and mental.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. There was someone else, right, Roderick?
I think that was it in terms of the persons. And again, if you have a comment or a question, please put up your virtual hand and we will be more than happy to hear from you.
All right, great stuff. And someone says we definitely need a separate discussion on that, which I totally agree. Great discussion. Thanks for the insights, everyone. So going back to like some of the sources here, and this list, of course, is not exhaustive, but this one definitely want people to start thinking about interest. Albert Einstein, he said it, those who know the power of compound interest, they earn it, and those who don't know, they pay it. So which side of the spectrum you want to fall on? You want to fall on the side where you're paying people, you're building people's wealth through interest rates, or you want to leverage interest to build your wealth, right? It's often overlooked, but I'll tell you, like, it's something that kills people. Interest comes through car payment as well. And a lot of these loans, if you our types of expenses here, you look at them, it's gratification. Because sometimes if we delay some of these things or not have them at all, you'll see that there's a lot of potential savings. And I remember working, with one person before, and the bulk of their savings came through interest rate. It was very simple things because they were more focused on the broader categories and embedded within, what they were paying where they were losing a lot of money was things like interest rate or not capitalizing on RRSP or just saving money wrong altogether, right? And so it's the knowledge and the competency around how to manage money that will make that difference. It's very subtle, right? And you can only detect it if you really know what you're looking for. All right, so we looked at the sources of expenses here. So now, there's this rule here that is called the 50-30-20 rule. I will tell you, I've never followed this rule, so I want to put that out there for transparency. I wouldn't necessarily call it a rule, I'd call it a guideline because, in reality, it's hard to function with a rule, right? It's all circumstantial and it really depends on what you are dealing with and what your finances look like. So I'd probably call this a guideline where they're saying, okay, 50% of your income should be going on your needs. And the needs are here, your rent, or mortgage, or, car payment, utilities, grocery. You want to look at something like car payment, that's not necessarily a need, right? Transportation is the need. And if you have means to accessible transportation, then you probably don't need car payment. If you work in downtown Toronto, you live in downtown Toronto, why do you need car payment? You know what I mean? So I wouldn't necessarily put this car payment as a need, but it really depends on your situation. So that's why I said this is more of a guideline. And like I said, grocery is one of those areas that's like getting out of control. And there's very little we can do other than shopping around or cutting back on, the additional cost that's coming from that. Here on the one side, they have streaming services, shopping, vacation. The ones is usually where most people will start cutting back if they're looking to, cut back on expenses. And then we have the savings or the debt component. And normally unless I'm using debt for investment purposes, I do not take on a lot of consumer debt. And I mean, I've found myself in situations where I've had to use my credit card to invest, not by choice, but because of circumstances call for it. But I have a long-term view of making that money back, right? And so I don't necessarily want to look at debt as a bad thing. It really depends on how we use it. But the guideline here is about 20% of your income should be going toward savings and debt. In fact, for me, my model is slightly different. I think about 30% of my income goes here, and then more of like 60% goes towards investing. And that is because, again, budgeting for me is not just somewhere where I list all my transactions. It is a strategic tool that I use to achieve certain goals. So you always want to align your budget with certain specific goals, right? For it to make more sense. Otherwise, you're just going to get bored. You're just going in there and writing down your transaction, right? But one of the big things that I want to emphasize, because a lot of people, when they think about a budget, they automatically start thinking about cutting back, right? I'm going to pull up a budget template here. When people hear budget, what do you use a budget for? To manage money and to cut back on expenses and yada yada. No, like I said, budget is a tool to achieve strategic objectives, right? And these can be objectives that motivate you and to help get you at a better place as an individual, right? So you make that alignment, and so you're making these necessary concessions or changes to align with your goals, right? But the other thing that I want to highlight, that budgeting is not always about cutting back. Perhaps your goal could be to increase cash flow or to increase your income, right? And so when you're thinking about budget, most people, this is where they go. So you have your income section. This is the expense section. And most people come here. They start thinking about how they can cut back on expenses, right? Budget summary. These are all the categories of expenses. So this template here is slightly more complex. You can have a more simpler budget where you're listing all your expenses, your income at the top and then all the expenses. But most people come here, they run to the expense section. But what about income? You can increase your earnings. And so I try to advocate for people earning more. And the reason for that is because it takes the stress out of budgeting. Imagine you are there and you already cut your expenses like five times since the start of the year, and you're going back like, what the hell else can I cut? My kids are already starving. I'm already not doing anything fun. My life is already miserable because I'm living paycheck to paycheck. What else can you cut other than cut everything out the fridge? Nothing else. So that's why I try to encourage people to start thinking more expansively about budgeting and start thinking about ways that you can earn more money, right? And there are many platforms out there that makes it very easy to earn money. There's Shopify, there's Fiverr, and other similar platforms that you can go on and utilize your skills to earn more, right? So if you're ever in a situation where cash flow is an issue, or meeting your demands is an issue, one strategic option is to cut back. Another one is to increase your income. So look at both sides of the equation when you're thinking about your budget, and it's very simple. You create if you're going to be using Microsoft Excel, it's just a matter of like starting, a tool. You have your income, so you just probably like sources of income, and I keep track of everything, right? So your wages here, side hustle, whatever the case may be. and you detail your sources. I like to put notes in my budget, right? So like sometimes I make little notes and I'll say, okay, my income from my wages will go toward these things. However, my income from my side hustle strictly toward investing or strictly toward paying off debt, right? So your budgeting should be a living document that aligns with your goals. So if you, in the new year, you say, all right, these are my New Year's resolution. If you're creating a budget, your budget should align with your New Year's resolution, right? And
You know,
that is what's going to make the whole budgeting exercise more rewarding and fulfilling. Any questions so far? Any thoughts?
I was just going to make a point there, Andre. You made a really good point in the sense of often we budget when things are going wrong, right? You know, when we have to, you know, cut back, or, you know, it's as a result of, you know, seeing maybe we don't have enough money. But I think in terms of just countering that, or how we should be preparing, as you're saying very correctly, is that we budget before you know, we reach financial hardship. So when you're, you know, when you're getting your first piggy bank or whatever that may look like, you start to have the mindset of budgeting, and it's not just a reaction; it's a proactive process in terms of again compartmentalizing money. But then you know, in the event that there is a rainy day or unexpected day, you have something there to also cover. And I think, and a lot of times, as you said, again, said very correctly, a lot of us just budget and start cutting when things are tight, as opposed to, you know, having more income, and that is a part of that budget too. So, yeah, definitely.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm glad you put it together so nicely. Yes, it's being proactive, because that's the reality. Like when people think, like most people that I see, when they're thinking about a budget, they're already in the situation. Right. Yes, Jason, I want to hear more from the audience. So let's hear what Jason has to say.
Thank you. And thank you for making time for questions, because I've seen some of these and it's very hard to pay attention when you don't get to ask questions. So I applaud that. I encourage it, even if you cover less things, because the thing is, it's for us to apply. I fall asleep in church going, I'm not able to ask a question. So, and I'm an ordained minister, okay? Pastor Pat just didn't call me out. I fell asleep right in front of the professor. It was boring. It did not let us ask questions in University of Toronto too. But what I said in the chat is that the problem is, and this is myself like this, so nobody should feel condemned. The problem is when we need help the most, we ask for expert help the least. You better believe the broke person outside my street, and I was asking for $1. He is the last person to ask me for financial advice. Okay, and I tried to give him financial advice. One of them cussed me out. I said, "Why you only want $1?" He said, "Look, if you don't have $1, then they'll just go away, because he'll find some other tourist that think he is dog and give him $1. Think she did a favor to him, right?" So the thing is, I did this too because I didn't have any financial advisor or help business planning, and I did Toronto Poets. I did over 100 free shows. People would just have to pay for food. I helped the restaurants, but I ended up losing my house. I had to sell my house to pay off the debts because I had so much credit card debt. I had no revenue plan. I had no business plan. I had nothing, right? I just got a grant from the Canada Council for the Arts. But after we did the album, I had to sell my house to pay off the debts. I had over $25,000 credit card debt, no plan to do anything. So the thing is, and now that I have that experience, I see people in the same situation, not asking me for help, not coming, and I'm available for help. But we ask for help when we need it the least, because better believe Bill Gates has a financial advisor, and I do too, right? And we don't ask for help when we actually need it the most. So I encourage people to switch that around. I'm done speaking.
Yeah, that's very important. And being proactive with that as well, asking for help early, right? I do the same. Like even when I was like discussing, like thinking about some of my financial plans, I run it by a friend and I asked him for his opinion, and he said, "What one thing he would change in my modeling is that he would discount my income by 30%." And I said, "Why would you?" And what I mean by that is that I was saying this was my net. Let's say I said my net cash flow is 1,000. I was making up the plan on that, and he said, "Yes, you know, based on experience that it's 1,000, but I would prepare my forecast using 700. So that way, you're telling yourself that you're bringing in less, and then you bring in more so that you always have a surplus, because that helps to really keep you on track. And so health can look really differently. And it's really important to get another perspective. I do it all the time, despite the fact that I am very knowledgeable with a lot of things, and be proactive with that, right?
Absolutely. All right. Any other questions for Andre? If you do, put them in the chat or put up your hand and we will get to them.
Good stuff. All right, so let's look at some key concepts here. Some of these were discussed earlier, some of them didn't come up. So we talked about budgeting. We talked about income or cash inflow, which is your income from your job or your side hustle, or from a business, whatever the case is. Then we have expenses, right? So cash outflow. And I did see someone mention something in the chat here about a car. So seeing a car as a need is an example of or view of what is a need and what is a want can cause huge problems. Totally agree. And a lot of people surprisingly see car as a need. No, car, it doesn't matter. Even if it's like the basic model, it's a luxury item. And you actually compare to the rest of the world, you'll know that a car is a luxury item. And like one thing I would say, especially when it comes to cars, and I see a lot of push happening. I don't know if people notice these trends. Car leasing was very popular for cars, but now you're seeing leasing becoming far more popular. You can lease your cell phone. I didn't know cell phones lease, but you can lease your cell phone. You can take a flight on credit, right? So you book the ticket, you travel, and then you pay for it later. So there's this great push to really put almost everything that we use in our daily lives to give you it in the form of credit, right? What I will say to people is be very careful. It's tempting, but it's not worth it, because you're going to be paying potential fees, you're going to be paying interest, and then if you're taking all these consumer goods on credit now, things that you'd normally pay for, you're going to find yourself in like financial trouble, right? But I've never seen a car as a need. I mean, others might have, but in my opinion, it's not a need; it's a want. Transportation is the need. All right. If you're in a rural part of Canada or somewhere else where you are, and there's no public transportation, then a car could become a need in that situation, because you probably very well need it to get from point A to point B. All right. When you're thinking about budgeting, another thing that I want people to think about is the future value of your money. What would this look like a year from now, 2 years from now, right? What are you working towards, right? So there's that futuristic component to budgeting that's often ignored, right? And I love to align the future with this whole notion of looking and steering in the direction that you want to go. Because when you think about the future, it's almost like you're creating a path that you're working toward, right? So, thinking more broadly about the budgeting, says, all right, my goal is to pay for university, or my goal is to buy a place. How does that align with my budget? And what sort of time frame am I working with? So that future value component is really important when you're thinking about your budget. It is part of the reason why I was able to effectively use a budget to achieve my goals and my objectives. The other thing you want to think about is multiple streams. I don't know how to hide this control bar here. Multiple streams of income, right? So I said that earlier. Don't only think about cutting costs. Think about how you can earn more, from your job, from stocks, from real estate, whatever the case is, right? I used to be really big on, job security, right? Thinking that, one job is the answer to everything, especially if you find a unionized job. That is not true, right? And, sometimes you don't realize these things until that job, starts stressing out your entire life, and nothing is working, and it threatens, like your survival, because your boss is, you're not happy at work, your boss is under your skin, A lot is happening, and you're like, what do I do? You have to just suck it up, and you have to go to work every day miserable. And to I don't remember, if it's Fiona or Erica who talk about the social determinants of health, and mental and physical health, right, becomes a factor at play. When you think multiple streams, you think about diversifying your income. And this is my rule. If I make $10 from my day job, I need to quickly figure out a way to make $10 from my side hustle or my business to replace the income from my day job, so that if my employer comes to me and say, you know what, bye-bye, I'd be like, you know what, it's gonna create an impact, but the impact that's gonna create was money that I was using to either save or invest. So it's not as material. I can still survive, right? So that's why that multiple stream component is so important. And it's something that we want to start teaching our children from very early. Start thinking about the future value as well as multiple stream. And then the other important thing, which we're going to spend some more time talking about, is the impact of inflation, right? How is inflation affecting our savings? How is it affecting, our budget? Is the cost going up? By maintaining a budget, you can easily look back at the last 6 months or the last year, see how your budget has changed. I used to spend $300 a month on grocery. Now I'm spending $500, right? So that is affecting your plan. That's eating away from your future value. How can you change the course of what is going on with your finances, right? So thinking about inflation and its impact will really help. And I'm going to get into the discussion of what inflation is pretty shortly. All right. Any thoughts about any of what was just mentioned?
I'll just touch it on there, Andrea. And I think a lot of this, at the end of the day, has to do with our mindset, and often changing our mindset. Like, so for instance, you mentioned, when we're growing up, we're hearing all you need to do is get that government job, get your benefits, and everything else is hunky dory, right? But we're not hearing information or conversations about creating your own business and creating wealth that has no limit, because at the end of the day it's very, very difficult to have a job and a side hustle and a family, and just to balance everything. But obviously, if you've got your own business, and you've got the opportunity to create more money without having to to burn that candle 28 hours a day, right? With a side hustle or another job, whatever, you're investing in yourself, right? So I think a lot of this, and including budgeting and including understanding finance and everything else, is a change of mindset, right? It's just seeing ourselves in a different position as individuals, but also as community, and being able to change the trajectory and change the potential for income and everything else that goes along with it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And think of your mindset like the goodwill and the balance sheet. It's an intangible asset. You can't see it, you can't touch it, but it's the most valuable asset there is. Mindset is very important. And we have Jason.
Mr. Kinte.
Yes, sorry. Yes, I just want to second that. I think it's the most important thing, because it starts with your mindset. And the last generation, we have to update our mindset, because my dad, when he came to Canada on scholarship, went to university formerly known as Ryerson, and his thing was, in growing up in Antigua, all the people that were entrepreneurs were poor. They just pick up seashells, sell to tourists. Like, if you get I get a job with an American company or a Canadian company, that's when you make a lot of money, or the tourist related jobs. So he worked for West Indies Oil when he was down here. And of course, oil money, foreign money, it's a lot of money. And then, when the people that have government jobs, it's more stable. And he worked at a courthouse. So then he still had that mindset. So when he was like, he worked as an auditor, and it was to have a salary. So even though he studied business, he never thought of starting a business. And then when he got let go around my age, he drove taxi, and then he ended up driving taxi for the next 25 years of his life, tried to hurt himself twice. So I grew up and I saw that, and I realized that when I was 12, I was going to quit my paper route. I said, Dad, I don't get paid enough. And he said, how much you get paid? I said, news advertiser Pickering it is like $25 for 4 hours delivering the papers, and he said I was gone 20 hours in a taxi, and I got paid $20 after I paid for gas and split it with the taxi company, right? So because that's their car. So I'm like, I'm 12, and he said, yeah, you're 12, and you got paid more than me in 4 hours, and I got paid in 20 hours because it was a slow day, right? And my dad got paid $1 an hour, and he had 20 something years of experience as an auditor. So I realized the best thing is to be able to hire myself. And there were kids, I'll end with this story. There were kids at co-op at University of Toronto that young people, right? We were 20 or whatever, 18 and 19 and 20. And they chose to do a co-op job with the government. And I chose to do it at Microsoft and run a website. And when I came back and I said, what did you guys do? Because Microsoft flew me out to Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Ottawa, Halifax. Bill Gates came and talked to us. Even a receptionist was a millionaire because she had shares. And they said, well, we didn't have to do anything. We got to surf the internet. I said, that's really good. You get to surf the internet. I get to build the internet. And so the thing is, the mindset of that security, the only thing I think is job security is if you actually hire yourself. And now these years, I got let go in the pandemic. I know how the system works. You know how a system works? It doesn't. I'm done speaking.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. Mindset is everything. And I mean, if you talk to a lot of people who are doing great things, they'll tell you the same, right? I had to change my mindset. And in one of the sessions here, we talked about that, and we talked about your circle and how it can influence your choices, right? So really important. And these are the types of discussion that we need to start having with our kids, right? All right, so bad habits to think about, and not only as it relates to budgeting, but just in general, right? So overspending, chronic overspending leads to debt pileup, right? You're constantly, swiping that credit card or, overspending, because you don't have a budget or whatnot, you're going to find yourself in problems. And especially, some people like to justify by saying, oh, when it rains, it pours. And that is true in and of itself, but I think sometimes we use that term lightly because we didn't plan. And so you live a certain way, and you live in paycheck behind, or you're overspending, or whatever the case is. And of course, by no means am I talking about situations where people have to do what they have to do, but I'm just talking about people who do this recklessly. And then when potentially you lose a job or something comes up, you start telling yourself, oh, when it rains, it pours. Well, it does pour when it rains, but what if you buy an umbrella? Or what if you look at the weather forecast to see what the rain is going to be, and before going out? The point I'm trying to make is that you can plan for the rain, right? And so when you plan for the rain, you're less likely to find yourself in certain predicaments because you were proactive. To Roderick's point, you were proactive with your budgeting, you were proactive with your finances, you were proactive with earning more and putting certain things in place, right? And so by doing these things, like eliminate things like surprises, right? It's because you fail to plan in advance, right? So that futuristic look at things can really help, right? Simply creating a cash flow for the next few months. And then you think to yourself, you know what? I'm planning to go to Dubai in 7 months. I wasn't thinking about that in my forecast. So ahead that there will be a shortfall in July of next year because you've already budgeted for July. And so you start putting things in place to overcome the shortfall. Or that, okay, my family members has this surgery 3 months from now. Again, you're forecasting 3 months from now, budget, see what the shortfall or the impact will be, and then you start creating a plan from now to address the shortfall. So you see, budgeting is a live and proactive document. The procrastination as well. So I definitely want to stop procrastinating. For me, I've created a routine for myself, and I get up very early every morning. So I'm up like probably 5, and I think about my plan and what I want to do. And that's my optimal time for thinking and decision making is between 5 and 7 a.m. So I'm up between those times, and getting all that out the way before I do other things. The rest of the day is more like executing, right? So you have to think about, your optimal time of the day. I think we all have an optimal time. Some people are in the afternoon, some people late at night, right? And that is the moment that you need to capitalize on. The problem I find is that a lot of people, they waste more time during their optimal times. And so for me, a lot of the times I ignore phone calls, I ignore people, I ignore a lot of things during the optimal time because I want to capitalize on it, right? And so that can help with the procrastination, right? So I'm going to ask in the chat. I just want to see, just for reference, like how many people here know their optimal time throughout the day, and if so, what is your optimal time? So you can just simply just respond with the optimal time. If it's between 5 and 6, you can just say 5 and 6, or it's 10 a.m. But I want to see how many people actually know that or actually think about their optimal times. And the other thing that we do sometimes is that we use emotion and not reason. And I was guilty of this a lot. I get emotional like everybody else. And I used to act on my emotion. And, like I went to a session, I think it was I don't remember if it's earlier this year or last year, but Michael Leachin was one of the speakers, and he said, like, you have to control your emotion. And it's very true. And so, I've been more cognizant of that. And so, like, when I get to even in business or even in, like my personal space where I'm making certain choices, I don't want to make, I've seen people, they're in the middle of something, and because they get emotional about it, they cancel it, and they're like, I'm not doing this, whatever, I don't care if I lose this money, whatnot. Can't make those decisions. Trust me, it will cost you, both from a dollars perspective, but also from a mental health perspective. We'll look at the chat here, and here are people are saying in the chat their optimal times. But if you have any feedback on any of these points here, like if you've had any of these habits, anything that you want to share, feel free to drop it in the chat or come on and raise your virtual hand, and then come on and share it with us.
So it looks like we have a couple of early morning risers in terms of their optimal times. And some people don't know. And if you don't know, I mean, there's no shame in the game by any means, but we encourage you to, look back in retrospect and see when you've been able to be most productive at, what time of the day. Is there any trends, or is there any type of sequence that you can identify? And again, if you don't see that, you may want to experiment to see, when are you most effective, when is your optimal time of the day. I could say definitely mine is at night. I seem to come alive at night. When 12 o'clock hits, as long as I'm not tired, my brain comes alive even more so. But yeah, it's very important. And again, we always say if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And then also the best way to predict your future is to is to create it, right? So budgeting and planning is all in one. And we definitely encourage you to if you haven't started to do these practices, to start and see where it will lead you. And we guarantee you that it will have positive it'll have positive outcomes for you in terms of just being able to see how you're spending, or how you can spend, or how you can save to continue blowing that out and scaling yourself.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, definitely. I will say one of your assignments today, if you don't know, is to figure out your optimal time and capitalize on it. It's really important, trust me. And as you see, Roderick and I, we both have our optimal times, and a few other people who drop theirs in the chat. That's what you want to capitalize on. And at that time, you want your own space, no distraction or limited distraction, from people and the external environment. And try to think about your challenges, try to think about your goals. That time should be used for growing yourself as a person. It's your time. And I've actually looked at a number of other successful world leaders, and they have their optimal times. They will tell you, like if you listen to them in podcasts, they'll tell you, I'm up this time and I'm doing this, right? And so, yeah, so really important. All right. So let's,
And just before,
yeah,
sorry, just this real quick thing there, Andre. But
yeah,
that also will require discipline, right? Because if your optimum time is going to be 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning, that means in most cases you're not going to be going to bed at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning,
yeah,
right?
that's true.
So it means that you're going to also have to intentionally set times, for you to go to bed or to obviously to wake up so that you're able to have this optimal time, right? And ultimately this does boil down to, again, disciplining yourself, creating a regiment, creating a schedule, which ultimately again leads us to planning, right? So planning is the word of the day.
Yes, definitely. Drop that as a reminder. Planning is the word of the day. Like totally. Like I got up this morning, and I can share. I'll quickly share my screen because I know like sometimes people are like, "Oh yeah, you're just like talking about these things. You're not doing it." I'll show you. Like literally 5 a.m. this morning. Top areas of focus for 2023. I put my areas of focus in 3 categories: personal, family, business. Right there, right? And I challenge you, like it's something that I've been doing for a while now. And discipline, I agree with everything Roderick said. Discipline is an important component of it. Like it's easy to get caught up in everything that's going on around us, but yeah, I challenge you to start planning and just spending some time to figure out your goals, and don't make it a resolution. Right? That's why I hardly go with resolution, because it's like, oh yeah, it's New Year's and everybody's posting about New Year's and their resolution. My resolution is to do this, and then after 3 months it becomes nothing. It should be a part of a long-term goal, right?
And here at the BBPA, for instance, we help people with business plans. And, business plans obviously have to include a budget. But if you look at yourself individually as a business, even if you're not a sole proprietor or an entrepreneur, but you look at yourself as a business in terms of having obviously income and having expenses, putting together a plan or a budget is integral for your future. And again, it'll give you opportunity to see where you can improve, and then obviously where you may be losing money or whatever that may look like. So it is something that we would definitely encourage you to take up and then apply in the sense of what we're covering here today. And it'd be interesting to see some people's budgets in the future, and if they're willing to share, or even if they're not willing to share the personal components or the ingredients of that, but what are some of the main pieces that you have in there so that you're budgeting wisely, and we could also hopefully inform on how those budgets can help you or what you could do a little bit differently. So that may be something we could do in the future.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds like a good plan to me. So yeah, let's talk briefly about inflation. Like we've heard this everywhere, and it's number one on the federal government's agenda, which is why they've been aggressively increasing the interest rate on mortgages, right? It's in an effort to curb inflation. But inflation really is the increase in the prices of goods and services, right? And so inflation has an immediate effect on our spending power. It means that we can buy less, right? So, $100 today potentially would give you like 3 bags of grocery. Maybe tomorrow it can only give you 1 or 1.5, right? Because things become more expensive, right? So that's essentially what inflation is. And these are some of the impact on your income and your spending, as a consumer, right? So it lessens your purchasing power, right? So, now you have to start thinking about your budget, and you're like, if my income remains the same, because no employer, or very few, I've not seen or heard of any. So if you know of any, drop it in the chat so that we can know, and we can all go get a job. But I don't know of any employer that's going to match your salary with inflation. Yes, they might give you a cost of living adjustment or an inflation adjustment or whatever, but it's not at the rate of inflation, because that would mean people be getting like 5-6% increase this year in salary. And I can't think of anyone who's gotten that, right? So even though your employer might be giving you an increase, that increase is not aligning with inflation. And so you can cut your budget to the point where you physically use a scissors and cut it. It's not gonna change your purchasing reality, right? So you have to start thinking more creatively about how you're gonna overcome this inflationary environment. And of course, I mean, a best solution probably to do, in my opinion, would be to increase your income, which is why I said earlier, focus on increasing income, because your purchasing power would be lessened. You know, less grocery. You know, a lot of the activities that you used to spend, you know, for your kids, you probably won't be able to do those things anymore. And if you do decide to continue at this level, so if your income doesn't change and you decide to continue at your current level of spending, guess where the money is going to come from? It's going to come from debt, right? Because if your income remains the same, your purchasing power is decreasing, and you don't have the additional money coming in to pay for things, you're going to start swiping your credit card more, right? You're going to get your line of credit, you're going to refinance, you're going to do all of these things. And these are not part of a broader objective. These are just you reacting to the inflationary environment, and you're taking on more consumer debt to get by, right? So that is one of the biggest impact on household spending, is that purchasing power decreases. We're thinking to ourselves now, oh, I need £5 of flour, or I need this much stuff to feed our family, and we have to buy this level. Reality is that your income level has depreciated because of inflation, and so now you're taking on more debt to keep the family afloat, right? So it lessens the value of your savings, right? So if you're saving in the bank account, your regular bank account, and you're getting 1% interest or 2%, you are technically losing money because of inflation, because inflation is about 6%, which means that you're losing about 3.5 or 4% of your money's value when you look at real interest return. So to look at the real rate of return, I think the formula is multiplying. So you have to convert the interest rate that you get to decimal place, and then you convert the inflation rate. I think you multiply the two, and it gives you the real return, right? So that real return on your savings is negative if your inflation is greater than your interest rate that the bank's giving you. So technically you're losing money. So even though you're putting money in the bank account and you're seeing it there, remember that the $100 can't buy the same amount of things next year. So you've lost all that value, right? So you have to think about the impact on your savings. But the reality is that in inflationary environments, and even investors do this, in inflationary environments, most people will resort to saving more. Why? Because generally speaking, investment becomes risky because the government is doing all of these things to curb inflation, right? You look at the stock market. Do you prefer to take a loss of inflation of like 2% versus a 20% drop in your stock portfolio? Of course, I'm going to go with the 2% drop. So that's why people tend to save more during an inflation environment, because other investments become too risky, right? So there's nothing wrong with it being a part of your strategy. But again, you have to be intentional. You have to know the why am I choosing to save. I'm not just saving because, right? Because if you know the why behind you're doing it, then you're going to look at the different alternatives. Does it make sense to invest in stock? Does it make sense to invest in real estate? Do I do it here in Canada? Do I do it in Jamaica? Do I do it in Barbados, Antigua? Whatever the case is, you're going to be exploring the option. And after exploring all the options, you say, you know what? It's best to save here in Canada because, and it's a part of an overall objective, not just a random thing. Oh, I'm just arbitrarily choosing 15% to save, and that's what the formula says online, and I'm saving 50%. No, you want to rationalize, right? Roderick, was that Roderick or someone?
Yeah, just to add in on there, Andre, and I think when you look at some of these like the Warren Buffetts and whatnot of the world, and how they invest their money, and sometimes Warren Buffett will say he doesn't invest in cash, he doesn't put his money into the bank, to have it grow. When again, as you said, inflation may be 7%, and the interest on the money that they may be getting at the bank may be not even 1% or 2%, right? But obviously real estate and then other ways that you can grow your money will counter that inflation, and hopefully you can find an investment that has a higher interest rate than the inflation rate, right? Or and yeah, I mean that's how you invest. But again, it doesn't come without doing your research, and it doesn't come without having an informed opinion or an understanding of how money works.
Yeah, 100%. And my apologies, everyone. I have the word lesson instead of lesson. So that should be lesson, not lesson. So LESS.
But this is a lesson, so we can swing it that way again. All right, I believe we got Jason. Jason has his hand up.
All right,
You're
go
up.
for it.
No, very good points. Like the Warren Buffett situation, like because he didn't lose any money on the crypto thing because he said he doesn't invest in anything he doesn't understand. So that's a principle. My ex, she said, "Oh, she lost $1,000 on Bitcoin." I said, "Did you understand what?" She said she didn't really understand it. Everybody's doing it, so she just put money in it, right? So the thing is, that's not why we broke up. Don't worry, you know. Just don't no. But the thing is, a lot of people lost money on that because they didn't understand it, right? So he says he doesn't understand that, so he's not going to invest in it because Elon Musk can just play around with something, and then all of a sudden it goes up and down. And when I realized that I didn't know enough, so it cost me my house at 33. I saw this guy on the internet. He said he read he was broke, and then he read one book, Think and Grow Rich, and he said he became a millionaire just that one book. I said, if he could do that, I could do better. So I've read over 100, not just Think and Grow Rich, and I named my company after books because that actually is even better than real estate because the ability, because Elon Musk doesn't even have a house, right? Not he's a good example, but it's the ability to think is the foundation to know how other people do things. And that's what we have to do, because that is more valuable than all the houses in the world. I'm done speaking.
Yes, yeah, and I completely agree. And it was Warren Buffett's thinking around investing in what you know that made me didn't invest in crypto as well. So I never bought into crypto. Well, part of it is that I never fully understand it at the time, but also I couldn't overcome other risks that were inherent in the asset. For example, it wasn't a regulated industry and the value was predominantly speculative. And so for those reasons, I said no. And so that is part of the discipline that comes with, investing, not doing it because everyone else is doing it, but because you fully understand and it's a part of a broader objective. Right? So that is crucial when you're thinking about investing. And like that's how and some things you'll have, like for example, when I ventured into real estate, I never fully understand real estate. I know how it works though, and that was important because it made it easier to figure things out. Imagine going in a space where I know absolutely nothing about. It would be very easy for me to lose money and lose time because I'd spend so much time figuring out things, trying to figure out things. I may never figure it out, and I may be paying people to do certain things that they weren't necessarily delivering value, and I wouldn't even know, right? So it's really important, and I've looked at these investors, and I've followed their principles, and I've identified 3 investors that I really follow a lot of their principles to the T, and I will tell you that it works. It works. It's just a matter of combining it with your own experiences and where you are as a person, and executing, right? Any other thoughts? These are some really good points for discussion.
No other points at this point in time, but yeah, we'll keep it moving.
All right, good stuff. All right, so it lessens the value of the income from your job. I spoke about that earlier, right? So you definitely want to recognize the impacts here, and think about how you can earn more, right? And looking at the different asset classes and see which asset class produces much better return, right? When I first started investing in Jamaica, I started investing in stocks, and I went in pretty decent. Like I went in like with about $10,000 in total, and like stock market was all over the place, but it was growing steadily. And then real estate came to my attention, and real estate has been growing rapidly here, producing like 20, 30% return per annum and continuing to grow, right? And so it was, that's the other thing about being willing, not being married to the idea that, okay, the money is here, is growing at 2%, so it's fine. At some point, you have to start thinking about repurposing your portfolio and what's in it, and start thinking about other things. So not because something is underperforming, you might buy into a stock and it's down 10%. You can choose to keep it there and hope it recover, or you can cut that 10% loss, reinvest it, and start and quickly make back the 10% plus make cash flow, right? So again, this goes back to the principle of being an active manager of your money. Yes, this is a great point here from Erica. Thanks, Erica. Remember to use up your gift cards. Their purchasing power lessens due to inflation. Fully agree. Excellent point. So the gift card that you're sitting on and you're like, I'm going to keep this gift card for whenever, use it now rather than the actual cash that you have, right? Because the purchasing power is depreciating daily.
Absolutely. And I think that's, again, one of the reasons why, investors like Warren Buffett don't necessarily invest in cash, because your cash actually depreciates, because
Yes.
the rate of inflation will, make that $100,000 that you have in the bank that you're saving feverishly on, less within, the next year as it was, last year, right? So we've got to be mindful.
100%. And yeah, we've talked about what is inflation here already. So yeah, that takes us, pretty much on time. The end of the discussion. I'm open to any questions or comments that people have on any aspect of what we talked about earlier today.
Bring your questions for Andre Flip Floss Smith right now, folks. There's no such thing as a dumb question. The only thing dumb is not asking the question. So we encourage your questions right now. Bring them come, as they say.
Bring them come.
Bring them come.
Jason.
Yeah, this is a hard question. So I guess you could refer me. I don't know. Have you ever heard of anybody that not only did I not invest in cash, I don't even invest in these systems. Like I just invest in really, like, it's because my assets are all intangible. So I really, my company's primary investment is domains since 1999. So, because two kids from Pickering sold one domain for $1 million. And so I said, if they could do that, I could do better. So I own over 100 now, but the thing is, I don't sell them, right? So when I did my real estate fix and flip, that's when I invested in, I doubled down on the thing that works. And that's what I think you should do, right? That's what Warren Buffett does. He doubles down on the investment that works, right? And when it's a good time to buy. And then, so the thing is that I guess my thing for budgeting, it's hard because, like I said, like, even if I was selling the domains, right, and it's long-term, people don't know who I am right now because I planned it like that to minimize expenses, but it's hard to budget when, say you just do capital gains, you don't have like regular income, right? So say I was just doing capital gains, like I bought my house for 500,000, but then I renovated it December, January, and then I sold it for $1 million. So like, it's hard to budget when you're just doing capital gains, right? So do you know of a resource or a community? That's why I started coming to these things. It's a good community, but the thing is to have somebody that actually understands that. I haven't met anybody that is invested in domains and building out their intellectual property. So I have joined a couple entrepreneurship communities that are for tech entrepreneurs. There's growth mentors that I joined. But have you ever heard of a community in Canada or even a financial advisor that is expert in that? Or what would you say? Because it's like I said, right? If I'm building out my book course and I have a plan for those sales, that's long term, and it's a challenge because people don't tend to buy books as much as videos. So I do the videos, but that's when I'm not selling the videos. So I guess just I'm wondering what would you recommend if you know of a community in Canada? Because the other one I joined just now is global. I'm done speaking.
That's a very specific niche. I guess, and I know they like to say Jamaicans love to answer people's question with a question, but that's not what I'm. But I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna ask a question, but I'm gonna give some suggestions. Like, so I don't know of any such organization, but question is, how do you currently try to sell to people? Because even with me, when I was trying to register the domain Flip and Floss, I see that it was like some version of it was taken. Perhaps what I'm thinking is that maybe this might be a situation where you potentially could be reaching out to platforms like GoDaddy and those platforms where that actually sell people domain, and to see if there's a way to promote your domains, right, to people. Because I know when I was to register my domain, it asked me, it says it's not available, but this person has it for sale, right? And you can buy it from them. So perhaps you need to start thinking about connecting with those people who sell domain to see if they can push the sale of your domains.
Well, thank you very much for that question, Jason. We much appreciate all of your questions that you had for us this morning, and thank you to all of you who asked questions this morning and contributed to the chat. And it is another session, and again, it was a very informative session. It's always information and gems that we receive when we're speaking with Andre Flip Floss Smith. So Andre, if you don't mind, please put your information in the chat so people who may have further questions can reach out to you and start to build their budget, start to understand finances a little bit more. And also for those of you who are in business and want to take your business further when having a plan or putting together a business plan with a budget, by all means, reach out to the BBPA in our BAIDS program, the Business Advisory Implementation Development Service, where we also help businesses with these plans. And there's no time like the present, folks. And we always say, tell a friend to join us here on Community Space. But, we want to make sure that people are incorporating these principles like Andre has shared in their lives, in their businesses, so that we're making better choices and informed decisions when it comes down to our finances in our community. And the more people that know, the more people that will apply it, because as Oprah Winfrey often says, when we know better, we do better. So on that note, we are going to say thank you very much to all of you for joining us this morning. Thank you again to our guest speaker, Andre Flip Floss Smith. And we will see you next week, same time, same place, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Community Space. Take care, everybody. Peace out. Community Space is the financial literacy program that speaks and reaches the community. Are we going to be in a better place, or are we going to be still, quote unquote, behind the 8 ball?
Because of the historical disadvantage that our community has, we most times do not have financial role models. Without that, economically and financially speaking, we'll always be at the bottom.
Keep proper books and record, because the data drives the strategy, and the strategy drives the profits.
COVID-19 sort of removed a veil. It's really exposed the structural barriers that our communities face.
These last 2 years, where there's been a heightened emphasis on the well-being of Black people, has influenced the influx of funds and opportunities. The time is now. How long is that window going to be open?
We'll see you next week. And don't forget to tell a friend to join us here on Community Space